Welcome to Influential Women of Washington State. I'm Katie Hall. In this series, we'll explore empowerment by speaking with women in positions of influence and leadership. You'll meet impactful women who have overcome personal and professional hurdles to fulfill their goals and dreams. In this introduction to our series, we'll hear some guest comments on the importance of women in leadership.
I think whenever you have people who are not historically represented in positions of power, the experiences and the voice that you bring always changes the dialogue. So if I wasn't a woman of color, let's say I identified in other ways. Let's say I was a man of color. My voice there would lend its leadership perspective from the experiences that I bring. And you and I and many of the people who we interact with understand that who we are as people, who you see me as, you will have a reaction to that. That's just who we are as people, right? We walk around, we make assumptions and decisions about everybody that we see and interact with. So when I'm sitting on that board and I talk about where I've been, or my decisions and my thoughts are informed by my own experiences, it's going to be very different than a former tech executive who's retired and has 40 years of experience as a white male of privilege in society. It has to be different because we're treated differently. So I really value voices that are not traditionally represented in the narratives that we see. So when we look at our magazines, when we look at television, radio, all those places, even this college, when we look at posters, when we look at each other, when we see who is represented there, our brains assume that's normal. That's who has the right to be here. And so when I sit in those board meetings and when I look out over the mission of Bellevue College and I look out at the students, I think what a privilege it is and what a responsibility I have to them to show them you should expect to have your voice heard.
Speaking from a political perspective, when you don't have people at the table who have different experiences, no matter how hard the well-intentioned people who are at the table try, they're not going to know. They're not going to know the needs of the people they're representing. They're not going to have that day-to-day familiarity with the issues. And so they won't be able to represent the way we really need to. And one thing I will say, though, is that we're seeing that change in politics so fast. For the first 5 years, I would go around and talk to people. I'd say, please run for office. I would encourage women to run for office, and they'd all nod, and I'd never see anybody. This year, there's so many women running for office locally, nationally. It's amazing.
What would you say to that young workforce as far as like the biggest area of adversity you have experienced in your life and how you overcame it?
I think the most important thing that young girls and women need to really embrace and own is that their life is important and that their dream is achievable. So many young people are simply afraid to pursue that dream, the lack of confidence. And what I continue to say, young lawyers, young women, girls, is believe in yourself. Believe that your voice is legitimate. Believe that your dream is achievable and don't let anything get in the way, no matter what. And I have to admit that for me, I suppose I was arrogant enough as a kid, coming from a disadvantaged background in Chicago, is to have some sense of belief in myself, to be sassy enough to push back, to not shut up when you're supposed to, and just hear your own voice and claim it and own it and say that you have a place in this world.
What do you think when you hear the terminology of, maybe you don't need a seat at the table, instead maybe you need to create your own table? Mm-hmm. Or do you think that we need both? What are your thoughts as women?
Yeah, I think we need both. I think we can't look to the same solutions of the past to think that we're going to come up with the solutions of the future. I mean, there's that saying, what's the definition of crazy, right? Like doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Yeah. And I think we're in a place right now where lots of transformation is happening. Transformation doesn't happen unless you start to try different things. I think it's finding a seat at the tables that exist. That might just mean like furniture change, right? Like we just need to get a bigger table, right? And add more seats to the table. And it's also, where have tables not existed for women, for people of color, for individuals from the LGBT community, for individuals who have disabilities? If the table doesn't exist, then let's create it. And I think also, how do you then also bring those tables together, the existing ones and the new ones? Because I think that's where the bridge building needs to happen, so that the power and the privilege that exists in the existing tables can be transferred and shared with the new tables that are being developed.
The more opinions and thoughts and experiences we bring to the discussion and the conversation about whatever it is, the better off we are. Because we don't want to miss something because we were siloed, right? So, and then we also have to look around when we're having these discussions about, particularly in policing, who's not here, whose voice isn't being heard, and then let's be deliberate, intentional about getting those voices heard as well. Because I really absolutely believe that the more people that we can engage with and connect with, the more thoughts and more experiences, we're going to make better decisions.
Thanks for joining us in our exploration of empowerment. We hope you're encouraged and inspired by this short introduction into our TV series, Influential Women of Washington State. Please join us for future episodes and hear more in-depth discussions with these extraordinary women. Until next time, I'm Katie Hall.